Vivek Ramaswamy is somebody who seems to have emerged as a strong Trump champion. So his saying what he has perhaps doesn't really come as a surprise. But if you look at his other rivals, whether it's Chris Christie or Nikki Haley, all of them seem to have taken the stand that a court should not stop Donald Trump from contesting the election and becoming president. It's the voters who should. But let's just look at some fundamental facts before us. The Colorado Supreme Court bars Trump from contesting office, which means that he's going to be precluded from the Colorado ballot. It is largely seen as a democratic state, which means that it may not really influence his chances in any significant way. On the contrary, there are many who believe that every time there are fresh charges filed against him or there is an indictment, Trump's approval ratings go up, his support base widens, and there are those who are saying that this could be a fundraiser bonanza for him. Some have gone to the extent of saying that Trump is actually celebrating the Colorado ruling. So my question to you simply is, according to you, and this is a complex constitutional question, how significant is the Colorado ruling, and is it likely to have any major impact on Trump's 2024 campaign?
Neha, thank you for having me and good evening. Yes, it will have impact on the Trump campaign and Trump's chances to lead the polls, primarily because in the United States, primarily it is seen and it has been a phenomenon in India also and in other democracies that it's all not only about the support that you enjoy with a particular constituency. It is your ability to mobilize people on the day of voting. What this will do is, if the Trump support base sees this, and the polls suggest that they are largely seeing this as an unfavorable move, as a move to impede the democratic rights, they not only see that as Trump's chances, but their own curtailed power to exercise their franchise. It riles up the base and they go out in droves to vote. That may change the thing dramatically. However, Colorado State Supreme Court verdict in itself does not mean much. As you rightly pointed out, in the last four presidential elections, Colorado has been a blue state. It means that all the electoral college votes have been going to the Democratic Party, and although its size is increasing, so five election cycles ago it had 8 electoral votes. Now it has 9, and next year it will be having 10 electoral votes. So even if it goes to the Democratic nominee, whoever it is, most likely Joe Biden, it's not going to affect in itself. But if the United States Supreme Court, highly unlikely, but let's assume that if it holds or if it chooses to not interfere with states' democratic rights or the state Supreme Court's right, what it means is that Trump has pending challenges in New York, it has pending challenges in other parts of the United States, and each Supreme Court can take a view of its own. Although some swing states like Michigan, they have decided they are not going to take up this issue, but other judges in other courts can take up this issue, and it has less to do with Colorado per se, but this model getting replicated elsewhere in the United States and shrinking Trump's chances of getting other electoral votes. So it is in this context that the legal findings are seen. And moreover, as I said, of course, if this continues, it will rile up the Trump's base, and they will go out in droves and vote, and it can again have a counter effect to what it's originally intended for.
Okay, interesting. So, Irina Sukuman, Chirayu Thakur makes some important points, as of course we already know that every time there is a legal setback to Trump, his support base seems to widen, he seems to become more popular, he seems to gain more sympathy, and he seems to get more funding. And therefore, there are some who believe that Trump may actually be celebrating this ruling. However, the other point that Chirayu makes is this, that there is a possibility that the Colorado Supreme Court ruling could have a cascading effect across other states in the US, could embolden, advocacy groups, for example, or Trump critics to move other state Supreme Courts and try and procure similar rulings. Trump has already made it clear that this particular ruling is going to be challenged before the federal US Supreme Court. So my question to you is, how do you see this panning out legally if the matter does end up at the doorstep of the US Supreme Court, would it be fair to say that Trump there too enjoys a significant advantage? We know it is a 6-3 conservative majority of judges, three of whom are Trump appointees. And whether we like to admit it or not, but judges in the Supreme Court are known to rule, along political lines.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me once again. As a lawyer and as an officer of a court, my position on this matter is slightly different from the candidates who said that courts should not interfere in the elections under any circumstances. Where I disagree with them is if there is, in fact, a constitutional preclusion to anyone running for whatever reason, then the courts should absolutely exercise their power in constitutional interpretation in judicial review. However, what makes this particular instance different from this general framework is that I believe that the court is overstepping its boundaries by reading into a restriction that may not exist, given the fact that Trump has not been charged, much less convicted of insurrection. So the court has no power to independently charge and rule on something that on a case that does not exist. For that reason, I think this measure, first of all, is not likely to cascade politically, precisely because many courts will be wary of overstepping their powers. And second, I do think that it's likely to prevail in the Supreme Court. And moreover, I don't think it's only the Trump-appointed justices that are likely to rule in his favor, but everyone else, precisely for the same reason. He has not, in fact, been charged or convicted of insurrection. And the Supreme Court tends to take a very strict position on politicization of electoral cases that involve executive powers.
Okay, so this is certainly a very complex debate. Some have even said that, this is such an unprecedented situation for the United States that perhaps even the Constitution of the United States does not have a very clear answer as to what might happen in 2024, with some even asking, could we have a situation where Trump is convicted, even sent to prison, and he still gets elected to the Oval Office, or he gets elected to the Oval Office, he gets convicted and he pardons himself? There is just so many questions right now and very few answers. On that note, let me bring in Ambassador Meera Shankar. Ma'am, welcome back to Global Lens. Great to have you on the show. We're talking about what the Colorado Supreme Court ruling means for Trump's campaign in 2024. Now, we all know that he is the front-runner Republican candidate. He's also leading Biden in most polls. There are some who are saying that the Colorado Supreme Court ruling is actually likely to work to Trump's advantage, because every time there is a legal setback to him, his approval ratings go up, his support base is fired up, and he actually gets more funding. Some have even said he might be celebrating. On the other hand, some say that this could have a cascading effect across other states in the United States, and then things could get very tricky for Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, do you believe that this is a matter that is going to be decided by the federal US Supreme Court? And if that is indeed the case, does Donald Trump have a distinct advantage there with the 6-3 conservative majority of judges that we know, the Supreme Court bench has, and 3 of them are Trump appointees?
Let's first look at the judgment itself. It basically says that Trump is ineligible to stand even for the Republican primary in Colorado because he's guilty of inciting insurrection and rebellion. And the court has used a very little known, little used Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which was adopted in 1866 after the Civil War, basically to prevent Confederate supporters who had fought in the war from joining the government. This would be the first time it's been used against a president. Now, even the Colorado court basically was 4-3, I think. It wasn't a unanimous verdict. And it has suspended the sentence till January 4th, giving time for appeal to the Supreme Court. So if there is an appeal in the Supreme Court which is accepted before 4th January, the judgment would be on hold. If that does not happen, the judgment would become operative only in Colorado. It would not impact other states unless they themselves have courts which adopt similar rulings. And here I would imagine that it could fall along political lines, that is, with courts in democratic states or democratic appointed judges, perhaps laying greater emphasis on accountability, whereas those in Republican states really have said, and in fact, the lower court in Colorado itself had ruled that though Trump is guilty of insurrection and rebellion, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does not extend to the President of the United States. So I think this is a legal question which will be debated. Was he guilty of inciting rebellion and insurrection? I think that more or less many people are agreed that he was. And on the other hand, does Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which talks of debarring congressmen, assembly men, and officials, civil and military, who swear an oath on the US Constitution, but engage in insurrection and rebellion from standing for high office. So I think that this is something which certainly will end up in the Supreme Court. While the court has judges nominated by Trump, this same court ruled that the results of the last presidential election, were fair and stood upheld, even though Trump had challenged it all the way up to the Supreme Court, saying that it was fraudulent and that actually Biden had lost the election. But the court upheld it. So one would hope that high standards of jurisprudence prevail rather than political partisanship. And it's a question because there's divided opinion on this issue. In the Congress itself, in the US Congress, response has been on party lines. Republicans have supported Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy has said he will pull out of the race if Trump is not reinstated on the ballot, and other candidates should do the same. Many Republican senators and congressmen have said that this is part of a political conspiracy. And on the other hand, Democratic congressmen and senators have basically said that it upholds the principle of accountability, that nobody, no matter how senior, is above the law. So there are two distinct views on the issue, and perhaps this whole thing is going to play out. But theoretically, yes, if this judgment is not upheld, then there is nothing to prevent Trump from becoming president, even if he faces a criminal conviction. He's facing criminal indictments.
Correct.
The trials are still going ahead, including in the case of the January 6th assault on Congress. to thwart the results of the elections, the 2020 presidential election. But despite that, there's nothing to debar him from standing for office or from actually assuming office unless a criminal conviction then plays out politically in a way which reduces his support in the Republican Party, because there could be questions on winnability. Because though he would still get the Republican nomination because his constituency is so strong, he might still lose the election, because mainstream America and middle of the road America, independents, these are people who are going to swing the election, and a criminal conviction could impact on how they see a Trump candidacy.